Hi, I'm Kathy Dodson.
And I'm Jocelyn Lindsay. Welcome to another episode of 5 Minute Indie Insights, publishing tips and tricks in 5 minutes because we're cutting through the clutter so you can spend more time writing and less time fretting.
Everyone has their own path to travel. So do you. That being said, there are pros and cons to every decision you'll make regarding your writing career. We wanted to go through some of the pros and cons about traditional versus indie publishing.
And you're going to take the pros, right? And I get to talk about the cons.
I'm going to take the pros. That's right. So we're going to start out talking about traditional publishing. So, number one pro, validation. When you get a traditional publishing contract, that means somebody else has chosen you. In fact, they've chosen you twice because you've gotten an agent, and then after your manuscript went on submission, a publisher chose you. So that feels really good, right? Also, it's traditional, and that makes some people feel like it's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, but one of the cons of validation is you can have a query that gets in front of hundreds of agents before you ever get an offer, if you even get an offer. Once you have an agent, your book will go on submission to publishers, but it may not get picked up. This happens far more often than most authors expect, but it's hard to find true numbers on this.
Yep. Now, another thing we want to talk about is distribution. So, this is a big pro for traditional publishing because your novel is far more likely to get into bookstores if you have a traditionally published novel versus a self-published or indie published book.
And as for the con, what bookstores? We're seeing fewer and fewer bookstores these days. Walden's is gone. Barnes and Nobles has changed its business practices. Yeah, so be sure you understand what bookstores.
Yeah, and another thing to add on to that is that the big five publishers, you're definitely going to get into bookstores. If you're going with smaller publishers, many of those are digital first and don't go into bookstores. So, really, if this is something that's important to you, really take a good look at that. It's a changing industry. So, another thing we wanted to talk about is just publishing overall, the physical act of publishing a book. So, the pro with going with a traditional publisher is you don't have to worry about the publishing process. And the published book should be of high quality since that's their business.
Right. But the con is you don't get any input into that process. You don't have control necessarily over the title. You don't necessarily have control over the cover. They may ask you for your opinion, maybe, but once you've sold it to a publisher, you have sold your book to a publisher.
Yep, that's right. Another pro with traditional publishing is editing. You will have an editor and a proofreader, and perhaps several types of editors. You may have a developmental editor and a line editor, and then a proofreader, a copy editor. Um, and you won't pay for these. And that's huge. That can be a really big expense.
Yeah, and be sure you understand your contract because I know some writers on the con side that they aren't getting as much editing as they used to get. And even before they go into querying and going out to a publisher, they're still probably spending money on editing. They're still hiring editors for developmental editing and proofreading.
In fact, you're probably going to hire an editor before you successfully query, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. But moving on to marketing, traditional publishing, you will likely have some form of marketing assistance.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And the con of that is it's probably not going to be as much assistance or budget as you want it to be or what your expectation of it should be. Some authors, regardless of how they're publishing, hire publicists or other specialists to help them with marketing.
Yep. So let's move on to money. So the pro with traditional publishers, especially the big five, um, is that you may get an advance. It may not be as big as you were hoping it would be, And most advances don't earn out, which means that most authors never make more than what they get in this initial advance. But it does give you some money up front.
Yeah. And if you do earn out and you start making royalties, you're going to make 10 to 15% less on your royalties, and 15% of your royalties are going to go to your agent.
Right. And you may even, depending on how you do indie publishing, you may be able to keep 70% or more of your royalties. Just depends. So, moving on to timing. So, with traditional publishing, there is not really a pro here because you control almost none of the timing other than when you send out your queries.
Yeah. Yeah. I think timing, like you said, a lot of it is a con because authors want this time, they want the timing of publishing to go fast, and it does not. Um, it's going to take you a while to find an agent. It may take you years to find an agent. And once you find that agent, you may have work to do with that agent to get your book ready to go out on out to a publishing house. That can take months, again, sometimes years. And once you have the publisher, once you've gotten through that process, it's going to take likely 18 months or more for your novel to be published. I have a good friend, and it took 8 years between when she started querying and when she finally saw her book in Barnes and Noble.
So, this is a really big topic, and we could go on with this list forever, and we're kind of going to, but not today. We're going to stop here for now, and we're going to finish up in a future episode.
Yeah, I think I think that's probably the best idea because, like you say, we could just keep talking about this. Let us know in the comments if you're thinking of publishing traditionally. We'd love to hear from you. And otherwise, get out there and get writing, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Maybe.